We have recently found out even more about how Trump and his administration tried to stop people from understanding how bad the pandemic was, how bad it was likely to become. We have these newly released documents by a congressional committee. We found out just last Friday that there are emails and transcripts with former senior CDC officials about the White House's attempts to sideline the agency at critical moments at the beginning of the US outbreak. Like, everybody knows that into the outbreak, they started doing this more and more. And then you had the demonization of the CDC from right-wing media, but it began very early. The emails and transcripts detail how in the early days of 2020, Trump and his allies in the White House blocked media briefings and interviews of CDC officials, attempted to alter public safety guidance normally cleared by the agency, and instructed agency officials to destroy evidence that might be construed as political interference, which that is multiple layers of interference. You're interfering and then trying to cover up the interference as well. So anyway, as CDC learned more and more about the spread of the disease, how bad it was and all that, they wanted to hold briefings about mask guidance and other issues. Their requests were denied, and why not? Trump and his administration didn't want people to think this was going to be serious. They wanted to roll the dice and hope that against all odds, we would be the one country in the world that it wouldn't hit, and they weren't going to allow meetings early on that in theory could have resulted in us being prepared months in advance for how COVID was likely to spread. But then that might signal to people that it was gonna be bad, and he doesn't want that going on. So again, the decisions they made as an administration were designed to protect them politically, not you in terms of your public health.
And this is what Joe Biden needs to be saying every single day. And forcefully, let's get some of that like malarkey energy. Let's get some of that, corn pop, let's get some of that corn pop juice going. Seriously, every single day you need to be saying, I'm the one that took this pandemic seriously. Trump is the one who did not. This is criminal negligence, right? And so, yeah, are courts striking down my vaccine mandate? Here's why there's a mandate: to protect you and your family and your workers and the economy and your lives and your communities. And guess who doesn't care about that? Donald Trump and the entire right-wing apparatus does not care about that. I don't wanna hear it in the back rooms. I don't wanna hear it in little snippets and little snide remarks to different journalists. I want Biden out in front saying that, not looking down at his hands, not looking down at the floor, into cameras every single day. Seriously, remind us that, because that's exactly what happened. And it is criminal negligence. And I wonder what's going to happen in the future, whether we'll just sell a lot of books off of this new revelation and be on our way.
Yeah. Some will sell books, some will try in vain. Like Christie is definitely going to run again. He was like bad mouthing others who might run, saying like, if they say they won't run if it's Trump, then they're disqualified. Well, he's just, dude, they're not gonna want you. They're not gonna want you. Seriously, how can people be so blind? I don't understand it. By the way, just one other thing I wanna reference though is, so in addition to interfering with the work of CDC officials, the documents show that Dr. Scott Atlas, Trump's special advisor, weakened COVID-19 testing while pushing a dubious herd immunity strategy. So you remember a couple of months where we were talking every day about herd immunity and Scott Atlas and his BS claims, and Trump saying, I said slow the testing down. And then everyone's like, why are people freaking out about that quote? He was joking about crippling our testing protocols. That's it. No, he wasn't. As we were saying at the time, he did not want tests because they demonstrated how much COVID they was. So he brought in a guy who wanted to do herd immunity, which just means have people get COVID. They actually did that. They actually weakened the COVID-19 testing. But we were made out to be crazy for thinking that they would do that, which is very much in line with their entire COVID strategy going back literally months. If you were worried about it, they were calling you crazy as well. And now we find out a year later that they did it. So what are the consequences? Is Scott Atlas gonna face any sort of ethical or legal concerns? He literally helped hamper testing protocols designed to save people's lives. He was brought in specifically to do that. There will be no consequences for literally anyone involved in any of this. They have found a way, as I said multiple times last year, they found loopholes in our murder laws. You are allowed to murder people if you make it a little bit indirect. If you use a disease and you just spread it out a whole bunch, you can get away with murder too.
Yeah, and obviously, what sucks about this country and about the lack of accountability in the justice system and the lack of the accountability for former officials and to really go after people, and again, not in a witch hunt way, not in a way that we want to politicize, but in a way that actually shows that no, this democracy is accountable for itself and is accountable for the crimes, and elites don't just protect one another, but sadly they do. What it is, it's on victims. It's on families of people who died because of coronavirus, because of negligence. It's on families of bus drivers who continue to drive their routes and who got sick because people weren't wearing masks, or people, or they weren't told that, that it was a big deal. I mean, this is what it's going to take. It's going to take a massive lawsuit like that against former Trump officials. We knew this stuff also from Bob Woodward, that back in early January, whenever it was, maybe even December, I've like literally blocked that out from my brain. That Trump knew that there was a pandemic, that it was spreading, that would most certainly come to the States. The last thing I'm gonna say is,
he said in that really fast, he said in that, it's not just the flu. And then publicly he went out and said for months, it's just the flu. And that's what the right wing did.
Yes, and the last thing I'll say is, there was a member of the CDC that did go and speak to the public, and that threw Trump off. He was mad at her for speaking publicly, for warning Americans. She was doing her job, she was doing her duty. But because we've politicized literally everything, including the CDC, Trump did, it was like, oh, no, you cross me, you cross the king, you cross the kleptocrats, then you're out. And guess what? You just made me fold my arms and not take this seriously as bodies piled and piled and piled. I mean, that's what happens when you deal with authoritarianism. And it doesn't even matter the political persuasion, generally tends to be to the right, but all kind of authoritarianism means you can't question, you can't second guess, you can't sound the alarm, even if it's in the public interest.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.